What if everything that we think about songwriting is wrong? And it isn't this inspired journey, but instead a scientific process. It's hard enough to have one hit record, let alone multiple hit records, let alone with artists who aren't yourself. Songwriters like Max Martin, Diane Warren, Shane McAnally, Ryan Tedder, these songwriters are worth between nearly $1 billion between them. What if songwriting is a scientific process, but we refuse to acknowledge that because it goes against our belief system? As musicians, we believe that music should be from the heart and authentic and inspired and meaningful. We need to pour our heart, our soul, and our pain into every bar. Or is it the artist and performer who is bringing the emotion, whilst the songwriting is just a vehicle in which to do this? I'm gonna get so much hate for this video, you know that. I'm raising the question, is this less about the artistry and more about the audience consumption? Think about it, when you're listening to music, the things that you're doing, whether it's that you're at a gig and you're pogoing or you're dancing, or whether you're at the gym, your actions from when you're moving your head and tapping your feet, all of these have to fit in to the consumption of the music. Now, this video came about because I am constantly listening and analyzing music that you guys send me every single day, which I love. I do my best to listen to as much as possible. But whilst I was listening to some music yesterday, something wasn't adding up. And I was thinking to myself, what's the thing that I can bring the most value? What's the area that I can tell you to work on the most with your songwriting? While many artists pour their heart and soul into their songwriting and their lyrics, it doesn't mean that they package it up in a way that the consumer will pay any attention. So when it comes to creativity and songwriting, what consistencies does the consumer want? And the biggest difference I saw was tempos. So what would I learn from studying 1,000 songs? And what difference does genre or the country or how old a song is? What are the patterns that fit into tempos of songs over the years that make them successful? And what can we learn from songwriters who have a career in nothing but songwriting? So let's get the ball rolling. I started by downloading a metronome app to my phone, which is a free app. In this case, it's called Metro Timer. And every single musician watching, in fact, every single musician in the world should have a metronome app on their phone, because you never know when you're going to be writing a song and you never know when you're going to need it for practice. I picked up this free metronome app off the App Store. What I love about it is it's got a tap function, so effectively I can tap along and it will tell me the exact tempo of the song. When it came to the first batch of songs, I picked today's chart music. The reason for that is because it's the most relevant. Now, I understand that you might not listen to chart music, you might hate chart music, but this is a study across all genres, and that was the most obvious place to start. After analyzing the top 100 songs in the chart at the moment on Spotify, I started to notice some similarities. More importantly, I started to notice that there weren't many rogue tempos. But one thing I did notice is in the charts at the moment, the most used tempo is 120 beats per minute. After analyzing a lot of chart music, I wanted to break away from pop music, and so I started to analyze rock and metal songs. So whilst the tempos changed slightly, there were still similarities across the genre. But here was the really interesting thing. When you took these massive rock and metal bands, their what I would call career-defining songs had a lot of similarities to the pop songs that I was comparing them to. So bands like Architects, Slipknot, I Prevail, Royal Blood, Foo Fighters, their career-defining tracks were still 100 or 120 beats per minute. After listening to a lot of rock and metal music, I wanted to start to delve into career songwriters. Songwriters like Max Martin, who's got an estimated net worth of over $300 million. Now, Max Martin has written and produced 22 #1 world chart titles. That is one less than George Martin from the Beatles. And on top of that, he has written hundreds and hundreds of tracks that are featured in the top 40. So what can I learn from someone who obviously doesn't suffer from writer's block? By this point, it was becoming very clear that there were starting to become groups of tempos that were used time and time again. So I stopped looking at Max Martin and started to study the works of Ryan Tedder. Ryan Tedder was the singer and artist within One Republic, and also now writes for many, many artists, including Britney Spears, Adele, One Direction, Paul McCartney, Beyonce, and a load of other artists featuring in the charts over the last 2 or 3 years. Now, this is where my findings and my assumptions started to become clearer. These 3 groups of tempos were now sticking out time and time again in different genres with different songwriters from different eras of music, and those were 100 beats per minute, 120 beats per minute, and 130 beats per minute. Each of the songwriters had a tempo that they would stick to a little bit more than the others. Max Martin tended to stick to 119 beats per minute, whereas Ryan Tedder, being a bit more modern, tends to stick to 130 beats per minute. Next, I wanted to break out of the career pop writers and start to look at more, I guess, rock and credible artist writers. So writers that have written for Aerosmith, Bon Jovi, Bryan Adams, as well as Beyonce, Celine Dion, Mariah Carey. So they span everything from Lionel Richie right the way through to Kesha. When it comes to writing songs across genres, then Diane Warren is probably the best. Probably the best known song that she's written is Aerosmith, I Don't Want to Miss a Thing. And this is someone who turns up to her office every single day. In her office consists of a piano and a desk, and she writes song after song after song. And what do you know? The same tempos start cropping up again. It didn't matter whether it was an Aerosmith or Bon Jovi song, or whether it was a Britney Spears or a Beyonce song. We're still in the 100-ish, the 120-ish, and the 130 beats per minute. What if we went out of that into more of that kind of traditional Nashville songwriting? So next I looked at a songwriter called Shane McAnally, who's a Nashville songwriter that is voted as one of the most all-time influential songwriters. And again, whilst it was a different genre and it was country music and there was a lot less distorted guitar and there was a lot less keyboard synth and programmed drums, the same tempos, 100, 120, and 130 beats per minute. So then I went rogue. What about hip hop? Hip hop has taken over as the biggest genre of music in America, now outselling rock and country music. Were the tempos the same? Well, the tempos were faster or possibly slower depending on how you would conduct the music. 140 seemed to be a real stapler for hip hop, which you could possibly halve to around about 70 beats per minute because it feels quite chilled. But one more time, when you look at those career-defining tracks, we were still looking at plenty of songs around the 120, 100 or 130 mark. Okay, so lastly, in order to get up to my 1,000 songs, I went back and analyzed the tempos of all of the #1 hit songs from the last 10 years. So this took a while, but what I did learn was the bigger the track, the more it had sold, and the more time it had stayed in the charts, the more likely it was to fit into one of these 3 categories. Whereas modern music really is now focused around 130 beats per minute. It was crazy. Whereas people will tweak 120 and 100 beats per minute down by 2 or 3, up by 2 or 3, but time and time again, 130 beats per minute on the nose was featured again and again and again from different artists in different genres. So I went into this challenge with some ideas, but not being a prolific writer myself, but having had many conversations with writers who've had hit records, with some preconceived ideas, but I wanted to find out for myself how important those tempos are and how much they reflect on hits versus what I am getting sent from you guys on a regular basis. And the biggest thing I'm learning is what I'm seeing in the charts and hearing in the charts as popular music versus what I am getting sent from a lot of you guys doesn't match up. I studied 10 years worth of music in different genres by different writers from different times, and what I came to the conclusion of is a lot of you are writing what you want to write instead of what other people want to listen to, which is very, very similar to the social media message that I'm giving you on a day-to-day basis, which is stop doing things that you want to do and start to do things that other people will want to consume. So here is an experiment I would like to challenge you to this week. I would like you to write 3 songs at those 3 tempos. And I don't care whether you are into mumble rap or extreme death metal. I want you to do this as a challenge. I believe these tempos are just guides to connect with our audience, but we still have to input the emotion and the talent and the skill and the storytelling. But with these guides, everybody wins. All right, guys, so that was a week of my life tapping a phone, but I feel like I've learned a lot. Hopefully you guys have too. I would love to hear your thoughts. I'd also love to hear any songs that you've got within those 3 tempos so I can start having a listen. So leave any links down below. If you can do me a favor, if you can like this video because I got a sore finger, and more importantly, come and subscribe to this YouTube channel and be a part of this community, because I'm really enjoying what we're doing. I'm also really enjoying looking through everyone's videos for this management deal. So good luck with that. But otherwise, see you tomorrow.